Welcome, everyone. This is the IHL Group webinar, Why Updated POS is Critical for Unified Commerce Success. And for those not familiar with IHL Group, one of the things we do is help retailers make faster, more educated decisions regarding their technology systems. Next, we offer syndicated research services such as our IT forecasting engine called Worldview and our Sophia intelligent lead generation tool. Then we provide retail advisory services that are a combination of research, analyst sessions, webinars, and briefings. And finally, we do custom research projects such as ROI calculators and other projects. We would like to thank Amazon Web Services for sponsoring today's webinar. And today you will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the webinar interface. Simply click on the Questions tab in the sidebar of the webinar. And we encourage you to ask your questions throughout the webinar, and I will be keeping track of those throughout the session, and we will try to address all the questions during our Q&A period later in the call. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Roster, our VP of Retail Strategy.
Thanks, Kelly. There's a meme going around the retail industry. Perhaps you heard of it. It's called the retail apocalypse. As the story goes, because of the rise of e-commerce, the bricks and mortar world is imploding. We've all seen pictures of dead malls and stores devoid of merchandise and, quite frankly, customers. It's usually followed by a rather large number of store closings. So I guess the extension is that's representative of all of retail. There's doom and gloom throughout the industry. Now, that's a really interesting and, quite frankly, a scary story, but there's one big problem with that meme. It's just simply not true. Now, take a look at this slide. Overall, retail is growing. Through October, U.S. retail sales are up $162.5 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, just the growth of retail in the U.S. this year is equivalent to worldwide revenue of Best Buy, Nike, Subway, Macy's, 7-Eleven, and Dick's Sporting Goods combined. Now, there's differences by segment to be sure. C-stores and mass merchants are doing great. DIY, furniture, men's clothing, all doing pretty well. Segments that are struggling are really no surprise. Department stores and soft goods. You know, appliances, home office supplies, sporting goods, well, they're down dramatically. It's important here to note that revenue is shifting to different segments and moving online. Now, however, keep in mind that Amazon is only $12 billion of that $162 billion growth, or about 7.4% of the total retail growth. Now, going back to that retail apocalypse meme, let me give you a little bit of the backstory why we got involved in this story. Starting really in the first quarter of this year, we were getting buried with requests from reporters to comment on the retail apocalypse. And quite frankly, we were all dumbfounded. We didn't believe that there was anything close to a retail apocalypse happening. Now, keep in mind, we didn't have the sales numbers that we just looked at. We just knew our industry. So as that noise continued to build, we realized we needed to do some serious research to get the complete story on store openings as well as store closings, and to either prove or disapprove that hypothesis. So we ended up looking over the summer at 1,800 companies of 50 or more stores. Hundreds of hours of research went into that number. Now, the net of all that research is this particular slide. There's definitely a lot of store closing this year, that's for sure. In fact, 10,168 stores will close. But there you go, that's the retail apocalypse. Nope, wait for the rest of the story. We will in fact open 14,248 stores this year for a net new store opening of 4,080. Now, that's not apocalypse in my book. That's transformation, and that's what we're in now. The takeaway here is that if you're going to cover this industry, you have to understand the entire retail ecosystem. You just can't take one number and blow it up and turn it into some crazy story that sounds cool. The other point here is for all of us in the industry, analysts, vendors, retailers alike, we all need to take responsibility for fact-checking stories that impact us all. We simply can no longer accept sloppy reporting about our industry. All that data and a whole lot more is available in the Debunking the Retail Apocalypse study. It's free to download from our website. This particular slide shows the data from debunking the retail apocalypse story in more detail. Rather than just net increase, you can see the ratio of brands that have a net opening or closing of stores by segment. As you can see, in most segments, there is a much higher percentage of companies opening stores rather than closing. One important note, the difference between these figures and 100% are retailers neither opening or closing stores. So obviously they wouldn't be part of that of this particular data point. In fact, even department stores with the toughest market challenges, there are as many companies with net opening of stores as closing stores. So in total, for every company that is closing stores, 2.7 companies are in fact opening stores. This particular data point looks at the data in terms of ratio of companies opening versus closing. One is even. Let's look at food and grocery. Now that's the second from the top. For every grocery chain with a net closing of stores, there are 4.9 chains opening stores. Superstores, warehouse clubs, there's not a ratio there because there simply isn't any store closings. Bottom line, retail is quite healthy. It is changing dramatically, but the overall industry is doing quite well, as is most of the core segments. Now here's the IHL forecast out through 2021. You can see what we're projecting, that the overall retail growth should remain strong, barring significant downturn due to factors unforeseen at this point in time, standard forecast methodology. One thing to note in this forecast, our total store revenue number is only sales conducted through the store. We've removed e-commerce dollars from the store revenue number and placed them in the total e-commerce number. This gives us a better picture of what's happening in e-commerce, as well as a larger percentage than what you've seen reported elsewhere. Now, e-commerce is projected to grow from $820 billion in 2016, rising to nearly $1.4 trillion in 2021. This is important to understand. Most e-commerce will come from bricks and mortar companies, and fulfillment will be through a mix of stores, including click and collect, BOPIS, dedicated fulfillment centers, and warehouses. And this is causing some dramatic change for retailers in all parts of the supply chain. Historically, where retailers had to have been experts in handling cases and pallets, now we must become experts in handling eaches. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart, but it's IHL's forecast of store counts between 2016 and 2021. Despite the greater shift to online shopping, we are still projecting a slight increase in total number of stores over the next 5 years. Let me repeat that. We are expecting an increase in total number of stores over the next 5 years. While we anticipate department stores and apparel to drop significantly in the next 2 years, we expect to see a rebound in the apparel area once the private equity issues and some of the heavy indebtedness of some of these chains works its way out. On the positive store growth front, we will see an increase in restaurants from 244.8 thousand in 2016 to 256.3 thousand in 2021. Another dramatic increase is mass merchant and superstores. We'll be at 51,925 in 2021. Now that's up from 46,778 in 2016. We believe that those retailers with solid business models and core investment targeted at upgrading the customer experience will not only survive this time of fundamental transformation, but thrive going forward. Greg, over to you.
All right, thanks, Jeff, for the background there. So just to give everybody a little bit of background here, what we wanted to do is start wide and then get really specific to point of sale. So let's get to retail's new reality. And that new reality is the fact that consumers used to have to shop, and now they must have to want to shop. There has to be a reason to come into the stores because so much can be bought just online and delivered to them. So the question is how do retailers thrive in this new environment? And they've got to do that to effectively compete. They've got to do these 6 things. They've got to transform the customer experience. The ones in red here are going to be the ones we're going to address today. They need to attack out of stocks, which is a huge deal. They need to decouple their IT spend growth from previous year's revenue, and that is really a critical change in what's going on right now and how there's a haves and have-nots in retail, as well as just the general economy. Leveraging the cloud as a head start, embracing mobility because there are major gains that can be achieved through that, and then learn from what the leaders are doing to be able to do that. So the next slide here that I want to go through is just kind of transforming the experience, and what I like to say is retailers need to emulate Disney. What Disney does better than anyone else is remove the friction of shopping, whether it's at their resorts or whether it's staying at their properties, etc. You can put your bags in at the airport and they show up in your room. If you buy something in their stores at a property, you can have that delivered to your room. You can take it with you. You can have it delivered home. Now they have the magic band. They've created a frictionless type of experience within their properties and within their parks. Second, everybody's a cast member in the show. You don't have employees that have JOBs. You've got people that are there to provide an experience. And once again, retailers or consumers are now coming to retail stores for an experience and expertise now. They're no longer coming just for product. And so your stores need to become temples to the brand. Apple Store is a temple to the brand of Apple. You've got to approach retail that way if you're going to be successful moving forward into this new economy. So the question that I have is, are the people that at your stores that are providing the experience as well as the expertise, are they worth coming to the store for? You've got to be able to do that to create the wow experience that customers are looking for, to spend their time shopping instead of just buying everything online. Second, we talked about IT spend growth. There is a huge difference in delta that's going on between the leading retailers that are growing faster than 5%, and those who are either even or declining in revenues in terms of their investment in IT spend. The leaders have decoupled their IT spending and their IT spend growth from their revenue from the previous year. This is really critical. We're looking at, this is the data from our 2017 study that we do with RIS News each year. We're just now compiling the data for the 2018 study, and what we can tell you is the same ratios are still playing out here. In fact, if you looked at a customer in terms of enterprise IT spend that has a $10 million IT budget, within a 2-year period they will have $1.3 million more to spend on IT than one of the retailers that are below average here in terms of IT spend and performance. So the rich are getting richer, and they're pulling ahead, and they're being able to do multiple things at once to transform the experience, while the average retailer is able to do 1 or 2 things, and the laggard is lucky if they can keep the lights on. These are the people that are most likely going to be eaten up by the pure play e-commerce folks. So Amazon, for instance, gets blamed for taking over market share. The reality of it is any specific retailer, if they go under at max, Amazon's going to be able to capture about 30 to 40% of that revenue. The major players within that segment already, so if you say electronics, the Best Buys of the world are going to capture the bigger proportion of the revenue by outdistancing the weaker competitors within their segment. So that plays out in terms of store IT spend, and what we like to say is you're either at the table of unified commerce or you're on the menu. If you're not moving to get to a single view of your customer data, a single view of your inventory data, and upgraded point of sale, you're simply not going to be around by 2020. You're not going to have the systems in place necessary to compete against all these different players that are extending all of this energy. Using a football metaphor today, when you look at the amount of money that college football teams and the Power 5 conferences are spending on their programs, and you compare that to, say, a Division lower level non-Power 5 conference or a Division 2 or Division 3 program, it's not even close, unless you can't really compete with the athletes and the facilities and everything else. The same sort of thing is happening in retail. So as I already alluded to, there's 3 foundational technologies for unified commerce. It's a single view of the order across the channel, order management system, a single view of the customer across the channel, the loyalty works everywhere, and it's up-to-date point of sale, which is the topic of our conversation here today, that can access this information and do loyalty in real time. So let's go a little bit into point of sale in detail. So this was the data earlier on this year when it was related to the purchase time frame for point of sale. Now, we've been doing this study for 13 years, And I can tell you over that 13 years, this number right here, this light blue number of people saying we're going to do this within the next 12 months, usually doesn't pan out. We usually have to cut that number in half and say, you know what, that 25 is really 13 to 15 maybe that'll actually do it, and other people will delay that. And in software, 32% is really somewhere between 16 and 20% that will actually upgrade their point of sale, and instead of pushing it to 2018. What I can tell you is the data through 9 months that we've just finished compiling, we had forecasted a 3.9% growth rate in North America, and the actual growth rate for POS hardware is 7.5%. So those numbers on the previous chart actually happened this year, and we're seeing a dramatic increase in the shipments of point of sale there. In EMEA, we were forecasting a decrease for 2017, and we're actually seeing an increase through the first 9 months. Not a huge change, but it's one that's that is noticeable in the data. And one of the things that came out of things is that Asia and Latin and South America are actually a little softer than we had forecast there growth-wise. But overall, the actual forecast was about double, almost double what we had forecast earlier in the year. So retailers are heeding the fact that they need to upgrade their point of sale, and they've got to be able to access the order, the inventory, and the loyalty in real time. So wanted to dive in a little bit into, I guess, some compelling data as to what leaders are doing differently. And what we found is the leaders, those that are growing faster than the average, are 96% more likely to have up-to-date POS hardware and POS software, and they're 150% more likely to be using some sort of mobile POS device within their stores. We looked at the data a little bit differently as we're looking at the stuff that we're pulling in right now. And what we're finding is those people with the up-to-date POS software and hardware are 10% more likely now to be growing faster than the industry. In 2017, their projected sales growth is 5.6% higher than those who don't have updated point of sale. And their projections for 2018 are to have sales 4.2% higher for next year as well. Further, they're investing in remodeling their stores and refreshing their stores at a rate 11.5% higher. And this is the part that's a little interesting, is because POS has traditionally been a high expense type of thing, but those who have already done that are actually investing in their store level IT at a 5% higher rate after they do the refresh in point of sale hardware and software. So you can see from these numbers that you have a haves and a have-nots that's occurring with point of sale, and that becomes a core technology still in the store as the system of record. So for many segments, as Jeff alluded to, retail has changed dramatically. Consumers are coming once again for the experience and the expertise. So the question I have for you is, how does POS fit into the temple of the brand? Is it still the same way it's always been? Is it a fixed device? Is it a mobile device? Or is it some sort of hybrid device that is both, can be in a fixed position but can be moved and used and worked around? And we're going to talk about both of those with the remaining time that we have here. But needless to say, you know, the POS of today and going forward is not your father's POS. You have to have the ability to look up the customer information in real time, to leverage the loyalty points across channels regardless of how they shop. You've got to be able to leverage preferences, order history, sizes, search history. That's one of the big things that's happening now with more and more commerce going to mobile, or more research going to mobile devices, is the ability to use that information by customer in the store environment in an intelligent way and a safe way, but to improve the customer experience. You have to have the ability to access the broader inventory information across the chain, not just in this store or the next store, but to be able to get to the warehouse or any e-commerce things. You have to support delivery from any methods of purchase, the peripherals, the interfaces, or payment options. You're going to have a point of sale that can send out a label to a barcode printer for a ship from store, or to have a delivery made, etc. That is going to be standard fare in point of sale. Further, that platform needs to work on different hardware devices, once again, so that you have the same functionality that can be done on a mobile device that can be done in a fixed device there, and that it can suggest upsell opportunities where appropriate, have integrated marketing where it's suggesting to the customer at the store to buy online with an offer, or the online to buy at the stores with an offer there. And then it allows you still the flexibility to do the secret sauce and the things that make you special as a particular retailer. So it has to have that kind of flexibility to move forward. Now, a big part of that is the cloud. And the question, and we actually have a white paper basically that says, is it time for Cloud POS? That's a free white paper out there. What we're seeing in our most recent study is that 21% now of the entire software budget among Tier 1 retailers for the store is now in the cloud, and that has moved up from 13% in 2005. This number is even more pronounced when it comes to Tier 2 and Tier 3 retailers, where 40% of the budget, software budget, is now in the cloud. So store-level adoption of the cloud, whether it's private or public, is critical to success in unified commerce because it can help improve the customer experience in many, many segments. So this is our forecast looking in terms of total number of units. This is going to be in a white paper that we produce on Cloud POS that shows that we are projecting an 18% compound annual growth rate for cloud-based point-of-sale software. We're seeing growth particularly among the smaller retailers at the greatest rate, but we're also seeing it larger retailers there. Now, there are pros and cons of cloud-based point-of-sale. You have the unified updates, you get consistent reporting, it's easier to deploy when you open up new stores, certainly. There's easier integration with your loyalty and your inventory systems and all the things related to unified commerce. The cons of the approach, it's network dependent, and we know that mall tenants have issues where they force you to use their network, and that may not be sufficient for you to do cloud-based point-of-sale. The speed of response of the system and of that network, and then certainly there's a tougher to customize that and make it unique to you. What we're finding is that the hybrid solution is best for most segments. For your high volume locations, you know, cloud-dependent POS for PLU is not likely. Like I like to say, ice cream melts. You can't have your PLU and your POS system down in a supermarket. That's a key part of the customer experience for many customers. But extensions, though, can be utilized via the cloud, whether it's specific offers for that customer, loyalty, save the sale function, ship from another location, or customizing the experience. All those are set up for a cloud type of environment. So this is just a little chart, and we'll send out the slides to anybody that's interested in this. This is kind of IHL's view as to where's the best location for information, specific information related to POS by segment. So in the grocery segment, it makes no sense for the PLU to be in the cloud. I mean, we even have the top 5,000 to 10,000 items resident in the memory of the point of sale today. It wouldn't make sense to do that in the cloud. However, the customer loyalty, any upsells in separate departments, those sort of things make sense to be cloud related. When it gets to specialty hard goods and specialty soft goods, it really depends on the speed of the transaction in that particular format, where you could have a hybrid situation similar to what we're looking at, where your common items are local but the full application is in the cloud, and anything that's kind of unique, you know, measurement oriented or returns or environmental things that are necessary in some of the hard goods environments, that stuff can all be in the cloud. Certainly the loyalty and the upsell opportunities in the cloud there. At C-store and fast food, once again, you want that speed and you can't afford for that to have happen. And then for each one, it depends on the venue, but in many cases a hybrid approach is the most effective. So what about mobile devices and mobile POS? So mobile is clearly hitting mainstream, and we have some pretty significant data that shows the results of that. I'm only going to focus on the mobile point of sale here for this, but we talk about 4 stages of mobile: a mobile manager, an associate that does everything but POS, and then mobile POS. But when mobile POS is done properly, and particularly in general merchandise environments where you have upsell opportunities, on average, those retailers have experienced a 42% higher sales increase than those who have not. But there's a right way of doing things. And before I leave this chart, stage 4 is the consumer using their own mobile device to go forward. So I say there's a right way to do things. So associates are properly trained on how to use the mobile device. They don't lose eye contact with the customers. The device is not in the way in any way. Number 2, it's a side-by-side transaction. The customer can actually see the screen when you're using that device, and we're solving a problem. That alone is worth 25% higher ticket when done correctly with a mobile device there. It's not in the way, but it's a sales assist. You have the applications in place to do the save the sale, the inventory lookup, and do one transaction regardless of the fulfillment of that option. You've got all those back-end unified commerce systems that are available to do things, and then obviously you have to geofence them. We've heard of retailers putting in iPads, for instance, and losing half of those iPads because their associates stole them. Because they didn't have proper geofencing in place there. So these are the 6 things that we say to do mobile right, you've got to deploy. Finally, retail's radically changing. We're starting to see haves and have-nots in the terms of success of the retail stores and their growth, as well as the level of IT investment. We're firm believers that unified commerce is critical to success, and updated point of sale is foundational to that success, because everything builds off of those 3 things: the unified version of the truth on the order, on the customer, and updated point of sale. Everything else builds on those 3 core systems. Next, the cloud is a great assessment and an enhancement to what you're doing there. The hybrid approach in terms of a pure POS is likely the best way for most customer segments out there, and can be a very huge help in terms of enhancing that customer experience. And then finally, the point of sale needs to be designed not to be in the way of the relationship with the customer, but help remove the friction of shopping at the store level. So our final piece here is just a reminder: retailers don't have to beat Amazon or Walmart there. They just need to not be the weakest in their individual segments. Those people that are not investing in IT are likely to be swallowed up by everybody else. And if you're one of the leaders, top 2 players, top 5 players within any one segment, you're actually going to gain share as the weaker players in your market fail. So finally, just before we go and open it up to Q&A, as many of you know that are on here, we also have lead the Retail Orphan Initiative. I do that as one of the donor trustees. Our big fundraiser is January 13th. We call it Super Saturday. Basically, for every retailer that we have that's registered by this week, usually generates about $5,000 in vendor sponsorships, and that's enough for clean water for a village of 500 people. This year, we've also added, for our own kids, a next generation summit where we're going to have experts in leadership as well as the Apple Store leading a curriculum for the day that's going to help build leadership training skills, life skills training there for our own kids, and they're going to have an opportunity to build business plans around, for instance, a self-driving car, or a social media system that's different from Facebook or Instagram. How would they go about building a business plan for that? And that's part of that day. So it's January 13th, the day before NRF starts. We welcome you to attend and participate and sponsor, and we would love to have you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kelly for some Q&A.